nerdy math guy sort of way. And since you're stuck for 80 minutes in this classroom with indeed a nerdy math guy, you have to watch this. And if you're good at interpersonal relationships, at the end of this section here, you will say, that's cool. Because you will know that nerdy math guy thinks this is cool. And nerdy math guy has a very small bit of control over your destiny. If you're good at interpersonal relationships. If you're bad at interpersonal relationships, be like, that's the stupidest thing I've ever seen. Why'd you even talk to us? See what I'm saying? All right. So everybody should write out a general form quadratic equation. What? A quadratic equation with no numbers. What would it look like? Well, it would look like this. ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. Does everyone agree? No numbers. That's a quadratic equation, yes? A and b are coefficients. C is a constant, yeah? Now, if this equation factored, we could solve it like that, yes? But we can't factor this, can we? No, because we don't know what a and c are. So we don't know what we are multiplying to and what we are adding to, do we? So we can't factor it. So what's the next option? If you can't factor, what do? Starts with a C, ends with an E, has complete the square in the middle of it. You complete the square, Yoon. Good job, first try. So we would complete the square here, yes? So let's complete the square. What is the first thing we would do if we were going to complete the square of this general form trinomial? What about that do we not like? We don't like the a, so how would we get rid of it? We would divide everything by a, yes? So step 1, we divide by a. And what would that give us? That would give us x squared plus b over a x plus c over a equals 0. Is everyone cool with that step? Going once, going twice, going thrice. Yes? Yes, yes? Yes, yes, yes? Okay. What would our next step be? If we were completing the square, we'd move the CA, wouldn't we? Right? So we would have x squared plus b over a x equals negative c over a. Is everybody cool with that step? It's just like what we've been doing, but we're just using letters, right? Everyone's good? Now what's your next step? Pardon me? Divide b over a by 2, yes? Now, I'm going to come over here. You don't need to write this down because you already know this. b over a divided by 2 is the same as b over a times 1/2, yes? Everyone agrees? So when I do that, I'm going to get b over 2a, yes? And what do I need to do when I get the half? Square it. So I'm going to square that, which will get me b squared over what? 4a squared, right? So when I do that math, I end up with x squared plus b over ax plus b squared over 4a squared. Yes? Is everybody good with that? What did I do to the other side? I added what? CA plus b squared over 4a squared. Yes? Everybody cool? All right. Now, what is my next step on the yellow side here? We've just done 4 of these. What would be your next step? Factor it. So we know that this side is going to become, as soon as my computer thaws, x plus b over 2a squared, right? Yeah? Okay, now, when I add this, what do I get? What do I need when I add fractions? Common denominator, right? So I need a 4a squared, don't I? Because this side's got the a, so it's missing the 4 and the squared, right? So if I multiply this side by 4a, am I in good shape? That gives me the denominator I want, yeah? Everyone agrees? So the top here becomes what? Negative 4ac. And does this guy change? No, because he's already got the right denominator, right? Plus b squared over 4a squared. Is everybody good there? Yeah? Okay. Now what's our next step in completing the square? Square root. So I square root this side, and I get x plus b over 2a, yes? And then I got to square root this side, yeah? Right? Plus or minus the square root of, that's where it gets a little weird. Negative 4ac plus b squared over 4a squared, right? And then what's our last step? I move the b over 2a. Negative b over 2a plus or minus the square root of. Now, can I change the order right there so it's prettier? What would I do? I put the b to the front, right? B squared minus 4ac over 4a squared. Now, can this be tidied up? Does 4a squared have a square root? What is it? 2a, right? So this side is really that root over 2a, yes? And when I have two of the same denominator, I can just add it, can't I? So I've got negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac. Now please look. We did all this crazy algebra, right? And it gave us this, right? Now think about what we just did. We had this, which is every single trinomial quadratic equation, isn't it? Every single one, right? And we completed the square on it and got to here, x equals that, right? So if this is every single trinomial quadratic, and this finds x for every single trinomial, does that mean that this will work for every single quadratic equation? Yes. Is it more difficult than factoring? Is it? There's a whole bunch of numbers and stuff there. Is it more difficult than factoring than doing number one right here? Damn it, where'd it go? Right there. That number one to factor took 2 steps. Pretty easy, right? But could we have done the quadratic equation with that? Is this a quadratic trinomial? Yeah. Yes. So would it work? Of course it would. It's just slightly more work. Nobody write this down. I just want to show you what I'm speaking of. That is A, yes? That is B, yes? That is C, yes? And the quadratic formula that we just learned and built for ourselves is this, yes? right? So negative b. What is negative b? Negative 4, just the number. Plus or minus the square root of b squared. What's b squared? 16 minus 4 times a. What's a? 1. What's c? Negative 21. Over 2a. What's 2a? 2. So that equals negative 4 plus or minus. What is negative 4 times negative 21? Positive 84, right? So what is 16 plus 84? 100. Plus or minus the square root of 100 over 2. What's the square root of 100? 10. Negative 4 plus or minus 10 over 2. What's negative 4 plus 10? 6 over 2. What's negative 4 minus 10? Negative 14 over 2. What's 6 divided by 2? 3. What's negative 14 divided by 2? Negative 7. Does everybody see? Now, this is when we test your interpersonal relationship skills. Isn't that cool?
So cool.
Exceeding expectations. Sophie Dolphin. But what you have now is this formula, which I will never make you memorize. I will give it to you all the time. This formula that works always. It works with factoring. If instead of factoring, if you don't like factoring, you can use this. It works instead of completing the square. If you don't like completing the square, you can use this. When is it most useful? Let me ask you this. If you were faced with this equation, negative 4.9 t squared plus 18.5 t minus 72.4. Would you want to complete that square? Why not? Because there's decimals. And there's decimals here. Ugh. Would you factor that? No. So what would we use there? Quadratic formula. What would A be? Negative 4.9. What would B be? BB. 18.5. What would C be? Negative 72.4. And we would just put it into the equation. Is everybody cool? All right. So do that twice. Thrice. You can work while I work. Can everybody do them? Is everybody cool with the quadratic formula? Yeah? Well, I know you are, Julia. Everybody's good? It's not that hard, right? It just takes a little bit of practice because you're just plugging in equations, plugging in numbers. I've been recording the whole time. Can I slide off this page now? If you're not done, you just come back and practice it in a sec. But you don't really need to worry because we're going to practice it a bunch. Okay? Let's look at this word problem. Let's see if we can figure it out. The sum of the squares of two consecutive integers is 613. Find them. So how many numbers do I have to find? 2. Do I know either of them? No. So I have to find number 1 and number 2. What do I know about number 1 and number 2? No. The squares add. Do I know what number 1 is? So what do I give it in math class? A, X, Q, doesn't matter, a letter, right? What do I know about the second number? It's consecutive. What does that mean? It's the next number in the line, right? So what is that? X plus 1. And what do I know about X and X plus 1? If I square them and add them, what do I get? 613. Can you solve that? You can. You have all the mathematical tools. Do you know? Talk to your neighbor. See if you can figure it out. What are you going to do with that? I'll wait a moment, and then I'll ask for a volunteer to say their first step. You guys are allowed to talk to each other to work this out. You don't have to be dead silent. First step that they would like to share. Pardon me? You want to move the 613 over? Okay. x squared plus x plus 1 squared minus 613 equals 0. Okay, then what? That's starting to look like a trinomial, yeah? Except what's in the way? Which square? I see two squares. First term or second term? This is ugly, yes? So what should we do with it? Pardon? Let's expand it. X squared plus 2x plus 1 minus 613 equals 0. Now what? Collect like terms. How many x squareds you got? 2x squareds. How many x's you got? 2x. And what's your constant? Equals what? 0. Now what would you do? Lost some lead, buddy. Go for Myers. Hey. Hi. The only reason I asked is because I wasn't at the meeting. We had scheduled the test, so it's my fault. I was just wondering. Okay. Yeah, I understand. Okay, cool. Thanks, man. Bye. I have been given a reason. I don't agree with it, but whatever. What would you do now? Pardon me? You could go right to the formula, but I would factor it first, just to get the number smaller. I would make that x squared plus x minus 306. Now, do I have a formula situation? I got A, B, and C, don't I? What's A? 1. What's B? 1. What's C? Negative 306. And I can take that into the quadratic formula, which is negative B. What's that? Negative 1. Plus or minus the root of B squared. What's B? 1 squared, which is 1, minus 4 times 1 times negative 306, yes? All that over 2. Negative 1 plus or minus the root of negative 4 times negative 306 is 1,200, no. What is it? Negative 4 times 306 is 1,200, 1224, yeah? 1224 plus 1 is 1225, right? Over 2. What's the square root of 1225? 35. No, it shouldn't be negative, Max, because our C was negative 306, and it's negative 4. So negative 4 times 1 is negative 4, and negative 4 times negative 306 is positive 1224. What's negative 1 plus 35? 34 over 2, which is 17. What's negative 1 minus 35? Not a trick question. Negative 1 minus 35. Negative 36 over 2, which is negative 18, yes? So x is allowed to be 17 or negative 18. Where do you see an x? Where do you see an x? What can I write there? 17. Where do you see an x? What can I write there? What's 17 plus 1? 18. So I could have 17 and 18. But I could also have, where do you see an x? Right there. I could also be negative 18. And negative 18 plus 1 is negative 17. Why can I have both? What allows me in this equation to have negatives? The squares. Because once you square a negative, you get a positive, right? Everybody cool? All right, now listen, this is where it's going to get a little weird. I'm going to leave you with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 to practice on your own. But don't do that yet. I'm going to make that homework. I want to go over the word problem at the bottom of 82. And then I'm going to shut up and let you work on 1 through 10 and 83. Okay? So let's talk about this one. Read the question. What do we got to do? I need length and width, yes? What do I know about length and width in this rectangle? They multiply to 264. So LW equals 264, yes? What else do I know about L and W? The perimeter is 70. So L plus W must equal what? 1 L and 1 W equals, which is 35. So I also know LW equals 35. L plus W equals 35. Who remembers how to solve these things? From the 10th grade. Who remembers how to solve these? Anybody? Anyone? There are two methods. I have a favorite. Anyone? It's a system of equations. Anyone? 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 Nobody? Really? No one? Jazz Curate? It's the last unit of Math 10. Do the words substitution and elimination mean anything to anyone? Which one is better here, substitution or elimination? Anyone? I feel like the Ferris Bueller guy. I love you, man. Remember that. Okay? Remember what I just said. You with me? Okay, if that's in your head, what was the last thing I said? That I love you, man, right? You ready? How do you not know who Ferris Bueller is? Come on, Jazz Curate. It's the greatest high school movie ever made. Ferris Bueller skips the day, goes out in the town, takes his girlfriend and his buddy, steals his dad's Ferrari. Nothing. How many people do not know who Ferris Bueller is? Okay, your real homework tonight is to go home, go on Netflix, and watch Ferris Bueller's Day Off. I don't care. Find it. I don't care. Download it illegally. It's required viewing for every kid in high school. Burke, you've seen this movie, yes? Okay. All right. It's okay. It's okay. I sometimes forget who I'm dealing with. It's from 1990. Have you seen Star Wars? That was before you were born. Have you seen E.T.? E.T. Phone Home. You haven't seen E.T. I'm appalled. Have you seen Ferris Bueller's Day Off? You're from Germany. Have you seen Ferris Bueller? No. Julia, have you seen Ferris Bueller's Day Off? Antonio, have you seen Ferris Bueller's Day Off? Interesting. Really? You haven't seen it? They even sing Dankeschön in it. You know that song, Dankeschön? You don't know that song? That's a really old song. It's a stupid song. All right, so let's solve this. Hey, if L plus W equals 35, then what does W equal? $35 minus L. If W equals 35 minus L, what can I write there instead of W? 35 minus L. So doesn't that make the area L times 35 minus L to equal 264? Doesn't it? Yes. And what would you do with that? It's grade 9. What would you do with that? What? What would you do with this side of the equation if you were in the 9th grade? You would distribute. And you would get 35L minus L squared equals 264. Now you're in the 11th grade. Is that almost a quadratic equation? Doesn't that equal L squared minus 35L plus 264? And isn't that an A of 1, a B of negative 35, and a C of 264? And then couldn't you solve it? I'm stopping there because I'm going to make you do the quadratic formula with it. So you guys are going to do 82, 81, 82, and 83. But before you do that, I'm going to give you a little hint. At the bottom of page 83, turn your page over, draw a line near the bottom. What are the 3 methods that I've given you for solving quadratics? What was the first one we practiced, very first thing we did in this unit? What did we do with quadratics? It's also the very first thing we did in our warm-up today. So, factoring. So the first thing we can do is factor, right? Factor as much as you can. Because sometimes that will give you the answer, won't it? Sometimes it'll just make it prettier and easier to work with. But sometimes it'll get you the answer. What's the second method we learned? Complete the square. Now we learned that completing the square is really easy in a couple of situations, isn't it? Right? So if I had ax squared plus bx plus c, when would I want to complete the square? When is completing the square pretty easy? When you can't factor, and when a is what? You're right. If a equals 1 and b is what? And b is even, then it's pretty easy to complete the square, isn't it? Because if it's even, it cuts in half easily and squares easily, right? So if a is 1 and b is even, go ahead and complete the square. What's your final option? The formula. Now what do we remember about the formula? It always works. But when you practice this a bit, you're going to find that it's very picky. Do you understand what I'm saying? You got to make sure all your negatives are in the right place, all your squares are in the right place. It takes a lot of practice to get good with it. So that's why I like to leave it for emergencies. If the first 2 don't work, I go to my formula. Everybody cool? Now, some people go to the formula right away because they've practiced it so much, they're so good with it, they don't even have to think about it. And that's okay. Everybody cool? So you got a little bit of work to do. Go ahead. Oh, guys, I'm the worst person in the world. I just said go ahead and I'm making you stop. I'm so sorry. We're not going to have our cumulative tomorrow because of the earthquake drill. So what we're going to do, because tomorrow's class is going to be interrupted by said earthquake drill, what I'm going to say is by Monday, so I don't know how much time we're going to get in class tomorrow. By Monday, I want you to have to the end of page 87 done. Now listen to me, please. Please notice that page 84 is practice, yes? Okay? I don't really care if you do all 32 of them. I really don't. Okay? But I do expect you to know how to do this. Yes? So let's do this. On page 84, there's 32 questions. Yes? 84, 85, 86, and 87, right? I want you to do 10 of them at least. Okay, so choose 10, and I want you to do factor if you can, and I want you to complete the square at least, let's say, 3 times out of those 10. Everybody okay with that? So you're going to do any 10 questions. All right? I don't care what 10 you do. Everybody cool? On Monday, I'm going to put up all of the answers. Just the answers, not worked through. Everybody okay with that? You will check your work. If you got 8 out of 10, 9 out of 10, or 10 out of 10, you're good. If you didn't, there's 22 more questions there that I want you to do some practice on. Is everyone okay with that? Is that fair? All right. So that'll be Monday. I'll put up those marks, right? And on Monday, let's not even do a quiz. Let's call this the quiz. Because you're going to practice it at home, right? Let's call this the quiz. And then Monday, we'll mark it. You can decide if you need to do more practice or not. We'll go on to our next page. And Tuesday, we'll do our cumulative. Cool? Does that work for everybody? All right. I'm going to change this to Tuesday. Now I'm shutting up.